If saying no makes you feel like a bad person, this video is for you. That guilt is not coming from this moment. You replay what you said, how you said it, how they reacted. Even though saying yes would have cost you energy, time, peace, you still feel like you failed. This is not about being selfish or being rude. Something deeper is happening. This video is for people who care deeply about others, for people who think ahead, who imagine how their absence might affect someone else, for people who do not just say no to a request, but say no to an imagined version of disappointment in someone they care about. If you have ever felt emotionally unsettled after setting a reasonable boundary, this is for you. This is not about encouraging cruelty or indifference, and it is not about cutting people off. Healthy relationships require care, but they also require limits. This is about understanding why your nervous system reacts to no, as if it were a moral failure. In the next few minutes, I want to show you why guilt appears even when you did the right thing, what saying no unconsciously threatens inside you, and how to tell the difference between real responsibility and inherited emotional obligation. As you listen, notice whether the guilt you feel after saying no feels logical or automatic, because that difference matters for many people. The guilt that follows saying no is not actually about what just happened. It is not about the request or the person in front of you. It comes from much earlier. You learned very young, sometimes without a single conversation about it, that being agreeable kept things calm, that when you adapted, when you softened your needs, when you made yourself easy to be around, the room felt safer. You might have been praised for being mature, for not causing trouble, for understanding more than a child should have had to. Or you learned quietly by watching what happened when people asked for too much, by noticing how tension entered the room when someone disagreed, by feeling the emotional temperature shift when needs became inconvenient. So you adjusted. You learned to read faces, to anticipate disappointment, to offer yes before anyone had to ask twice. Not because you wanted to be selfless, but because it worked. It kept connection intact. So now when you say no as an adult, even gently, even reasonably, your body does not experience it as a neutral decision. It experiences it as risk. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts reviewing the moment. Your nervous system scans for consequences. Not because anyone is angry, not because you did something wrong, but because somewhere inside, saying no still feels like breaking an unspoken rule. A rule that once said, your needs are acceptable, as long as they do not disrupt anyone else's comfort. So the guilt arrives automatically, not as a moral signal, but as a familiar warning. Return to safety, return to harmony, return to the version of you that keeps things smooth. And that guilt is not proof of selfishness. It is proof that you stepped outside a pattern that once protected you, but no longer fits who you are now. You did not fail. You did something unfamiliar. Another reason guilt appears is because saying no does not feel like a simple boundary. It feels like rejection. Even when you are calm, even when you explain yourself, even when you offer care alongside the no, your mind does not stop at the request. It jumps ahead. You imagine the pause on the other end of the message, the change in tone, the unspoken disappointment. You imagine someone feeling pushed away, overlooked, less important, and because you are emotionally perceptive, you feel responsible for that imagined feeling. So the no does not end when you say it, it follows you. You replay their face, their silence. The way the conversation shifted, not because you enjoy overthinking, but because somewhere inside, you believe it is your job to keep emotional equilibrium, to prevent discomfort, to smooth the moment, to make sure no one feels rejected. But here is the part that was never taught. Disappointment is not damage. Someone feeling let down is not the same as someone being harmed. Discomfort is not cruelty, and sadness is not abandonment. Other people are allowed to feel things without you stepping in to correct the feeling, without you taking responsibility for it. You can care about someone and still allow them to experience frustration. You can value a relationship and still say no within it. A boundary does not withdraw love. It simply marks where your responsibility ends. And when guilt shows up here, it is not because you hurt someone. It is because you are unlearning the belief that connection requires constant emotional management. There is also a deeper layer beneath the guilt, one that has less to do with the request and more to do with who you believe you are. If you are known as reliable, the one people count on, the one who always shows up, your value has quietly become tied to consistency, availability, and emotional steadiness. People introduce you as dependable. They trust you with responsibility. They expect you to say yes over time. That role stops being something you do and starts being something you are. So when you consider saying no, it does not feel like declining a task. It feels like stepping out of character. You are not just afraid of disappointing someone, you are afraid of destabilizing the version of yourself that has earned love, respect, and belonging. Guilt appears here as a corrective force. It nudges you back toward familiarity, back toward the self that feels safe and acceptable. Not because that self is truer, but because it has been rewarded. But an identity built entirely on availability comes at a cost. Every unspoken yes, every moment of override, quietly accumulates and over time. What begins as reliability turns into exhaustion. What begins as helpfulness turns into resentment. Not toward others, but toward yourself, because a self that only exists in service eventually disappears from its own life. Saying no in this moment is not a rejection of who you are. It is an expansion of it, a way of allowing your identity to include limits, rest, and choice. The next time you say no, do not ask yourself, was this kind? Ask yourself, was this honest? Then notice what the guilt says. Does it point to real harm, or does it simply want you to return to a familiar role? You do not need to silence the guilt, just observe it. Guilt is not always a signal of wrongdoing. Sometimes it is a withdrawal symptom from a pattern that no longer serves you. Saying no is not taking something away. It is preserving something essential. Your capacity, your clarity, your presence. If this resonated, sit with it. You do not need to change overnight, and if you want more reflections like this, every day, human science explores the quiet patterns shaping how we relate to others and to ourselves. You are not difficult for having limits. You are not cold for choosing yourself. The people who benefit from your yes also benefit from a you who is not depleted, and a no, said honestly, is often the most respectful answer you can give.